हेलो दोस्तों, कैसे हो आप सब। ये थोड़ा सा एडजस्टमेंट टेढ़ा मेढ़ा हो गया था। आ, इस वजह से मैं कहा चेक कर लूँ क्या चल रहा है। ठीक। सो स्टार्ट करते हैं हम अपना हिस्ट्री और इकोनॉमी रिवीजन मेरा है। तो इसमें हम लोग पढ़ेंगे बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट balance of payment the four sector model of Indian economy consists of balance of payment BOP. Okay, the first one is the four sector model of Indian economy consists of first one is household, second one firms, third one government, and the last one is rest of the world. And the balance of payment record the transaction in goods, services, and assets between resident of a country with the rest of the world for a specified time. Typically a year. It is prepared by the central bank of a country, Reserve Bank of India. In case of India, in a set format introduced by International Monetary Fund, IMF, also known as BPM, also known as BPM 6, or the sixth edition of the balance of payments and its international investment position manual. The Bretton Woods Conference 1944. The Bretton Woods Conference happens on 1994. The Bretton Woods Agreement was negotiated in July 1944 in Bretton Woods. New Hampshire, United States of America. Under the Bretton Woods system. Gold was the basic basis for the US dollar, and other currencies were pegged on the US dollar value. It created two Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, which were formally introduced in December 1945. The purpose of IMF was to monitor exchange rates. And identify nations that needed global monetary support. The World Bank, initially called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, was established to manage funds. The World Bank, initially called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, was established to manage funds available for aiding countries that had been physically and financially devastated by World War II. The components of balance of payments. There are two main accounts. There are two main accounts in the BOP: the current account and the capital account. Components of BOP: balance of payment. Current account. BOP components of BOP is, first one is current account and the second one is capital account. First one, current account, has two types: visible and invisible. Visible comes with goods, invisible comes with services, income and transfers, and capital account comes with three types, like investment, loan, and banking capital. In investment we got two types: FDI and FPI. Current account is the record of trade in goods and services and transfer payments. Trade in goods includes exports and imports of goods. Trade in services includes factor income and non-factor income transactions. Transfer payment are the receipts which the residents of a country get for free without having to provide any goods or services in return. They consist of gifts, remittances, and grants given by the government or by private citizens living abroad. Transfer payments are the receipts which the resident of a country get for free without having to provide any goods or services in return. They consist of gifts, remittances, and grants given by the government or by private citizens living abroad. buying foreign goods buying foreign goods is the expenditure for the buying country, and it becomes the income of the foreign country from where goods are being purchased. Hence the purchase of foreign goods are imports decreases the domestic demand for goods and service in our country. Similarly, selling of foreign goods or export brings income to our country. Current account has two company. Balance of trade or trade balance. The current account has two components. Balance of trade or trade balance, balance or balance on invisible, balance of trade, BUT. The balance of trade is the difference between the value of export. The balance of trade is the difference between the value of export and the value of goods of a country in a given period of time. Export of goods is entered as a credit item in BUT, balance of trade, whereas import of good is entered as a debit item in BUT, balance of trade. It is also known as trade balance. BUT. Balance of trade is said to be in balance when export of goods are equal to the imports of goods. Balance of trade is said to be in balance when export of goods are equal to imports of goods. Surplus balance of trade or trade surplus will arise if a country exports more goods than what it imports. Deficit balance of trade or trade deficit will arise if a country import more goods than what it export. Balance of invisible. Net invisible is the difference between net invisible is the difference between Net invisible is the difference between the value of export and the value of import of invisible of a country in a given period of time. Invisible includes services, transfers, and flows of income. That takes place between different countries. Different countries. Services trade include both factor and non-factor income. Services trade includes both factor and non-factor income. Factor income, it includes net international earning. On factors of production like land, labor, and capital. Factor income, it includes net international income. Factor income, it includes net international earning on factors of production like labor, land, and capital. Non-factor income, it is the net sale of service products like shipping, banking, tourism, software services, etc. Capital account records all international transactions of assets. And assets can be in any one of the form in which wealth can be held, for example money, stock, bonds, government debt, etc. Capital account records all international transactions of asset. An asset can be in any one of the form in which wealth can be held. For example, gold, stock, bond, government debt. The purchase of asset in a debit item. Purchase of assets in a debit item. On the capital account. Example: an Indian buying a UK company car enters into a capital account transaction as a debit item, as foreign exchange is flowing out of India. On the other hand, the sale of asset, like the sale of shares of an Indian economy to an American customer is a credit item on the capital account. The items which are a part of capital account transactions are foreign direct investments, FDI. Foreign institutional investment, FII. Foreign institutional investment, external borrowing and assistance. Difference between foreign district investment FDI, foreign direct investment FDI, and FPI, foreign portfolio investment. Definition of FDI. It is an investment made by a firm or individual in one country into businesses or firm located in another country. Foreign portfolio investment. Definition of FPI, foreign portfolio investment. It refers to investment made in securities and sorry financial assets issued in another country. Example: it involves acquiring a large company. It involves acquiring a large company along with the transfer of businesses technology. It is restricted to buy stake in the company. Example of FPI: it is restricted to buy stake in the company. Benefit of FDI: less volatile. Benefit of FPI, foreign portfolio investment: high volatile. Drawbacks: restricted to large investor, preferred by a small investor. Restricted to large investors. FDI is restricted to large investor. FPI is preferred by small investors. External commercial borrowings ECB borrowings. External commercial borrowings: it is an instrument that helps Indian firms and organizations to raise funds from outside India in foreign currencies. Indian corporations are permitted by the Indian government to raise funds using external commercial borrowing to help the companies expand their capacity and businesses. External commercial borrowing can also be used by us also be used to bring in fresh investment. Funds can be raised using external commercial borrowing either through the approval route or the automatic route. There are certain eligibility regulations created by the government for availing of finance under the automatic. There are certain eligibility regulation created by the government for availing of finance under the automatic route relating to amounts industry, the end use of the funds, etc. Companies that wish to raise finance through ECB will have to meet these eligibility criteria, and funds can be raised without the need for approval. The approval route on the other hand requires companies that fall under certain pre-specified sector to get the RBI's on the government's permissions before raising funds through external commercial borrowing. Remittances are funds transferred from migrant to their home country. Remittances are funds transferred from migrant to their home country. They are the private savings of workers and families that are spent in the home country for food, clothing, and other expenditure. And which drive the home economy. For many developing nations, remittances from citizens working abroad provide an important source of much needed funds. World Bank Migration and Development Brief Report. World Bank's Migration and Development Brief Report. Remittances to low and middle income countries. LMICs grew at an estimated 5% to 626 billion. This is sharply lower than the 10.2% increase in 2001. Remittances of low and middle income countries. Remittances to low and middle income countries. Remittances to low and middle income countries LMICs grew at an estimated 5% at 626 billion, 626 billion. This is sharply lower than the 10.2% increase in 2001. According to the World Bank report, remittances flows to India will rise 12% to reach 100 billion this year. That puts its inflow far ahead the countries including Mexico, China and the Philippines. World Health Organization World Report on the Health of Refugees and Migrants. World Report on the health of refugees and migrants on the health of refugees and migrants. India received $87 billion in remittances in 2001. India received $87 billion in remittances in 2021 and was the top remittances recipient ahead of countries like China and Mexico. Ahead of countries like China and Mexico. The top 5 remittances recipient in current US dollar. The top 5 remittances recipients in current US dollar were India, China, Mexico and Philippines and Egypt. Whew. मैडनेस पे भी हद होती है भैया. मुझे नहीं देवे हैं ये सब. Components of balance of payment. Components of balance of payment is first one is current account, second one is capital account, and here third one is official reserve transaction, and the fourth one is error and omission. Balance of payment surplus and deficit. For surplus and deficit, balance of payment comes with surplus and deficit. Loss. A country that has a deficit in its country account. A country that has a deficit in its current account, spending more than it receives from sales to the rest of the world, must finance it by selling asset or by borrowing from abroad to maintain equilibrium at the balance of payment. It is to be noted that the net balance of payment of the entire world is zero. It is to be noted that the balance of payment of the entire world is zero. Thus, any current account deficit must be financed by a capital account. Thus, any current account deficit must be financed by a capital account surplus, that is a net capital inflow. If current account plus capital account equal to zero, in this case, a country is said to be in balance of payment. current account plus capital account is equal to 0, then country is said to be balance of payment equilibrium. The current account deficit is financed entirely by international lending without any reserve movements. Official reserve transactions. Official reserve transactions are buying and selling of currency in the market by the RBI. Official reserve transactions are buying and selling of currency in the market by RBI. When the economy is in deficit, foreign currencies are sold in the exchange market. Foreign currencies are sold in the exchange market, and when the economy is in surplus, they are bought. Sorry, the reserve bank sells foreign exchange when there is a deficit. When there is a deficit, this is called the official reserve sale. The decrease in official reserves is called the overall balance of payment. The decrease in official reserves is called the overall balance of payment deficit, whereas the increase in official reserves is called the overall balance. It's called the overall balance of payment. It's called the overall balance of payment surplus. According to the RBI's October 2022 bulletin, India has foreign exchange reserves worth 532.9 billion. That accounts for 8.7 months worth of imports projected for the current financial year. Balance of trade. The balance of trade BOT is the difference between the value of export and the value of import of goods of a country in a given period of time. Export of goods is entered as a credit item in BOT, whereas import of goods is entered as a debit item in BOT. It is also known as trade balance. BOT, balance of trade, is said to be in balance when export of goods are equal to the import of goods. Surplus. Balance of trade or trade surplus will arise if a country exports more goods than what it imports. Deficit. Balance of trade or trade deficit will arise if a country imports more goods than what it exports. It includes the visible part of the current account of balance of payment. It only constitutes the trade in goods and does not contain services. It only constitutes the trade in goods. And does not contain services. In terms of value, India is a trade deficit country. The import is greater than export. Balance of payment (BOP) crisis. The BOP can either be positive or negative. Balance of payment crisis either can be positive or negative. Case 1. If balance of payment is negative, for example, minus 50 billion US dollar, the forex reserve is the forex reserve is 600 billion US dollar. The situation of crisis does not arise in case 1. In case 2, if BOP is negative, for example, minus 50 billion US dollar, the forex reserve is 30 billion US dollar. This is the situation of the balance of payment crisis. Hence, BOP's crisis occurs when BOP deficit is greater than forex reserve with the central bank of the country. In case of the balance of payment crisis, The International Monetary Fund extends loan to the country in crisis. Extend loans to the country in crisis under the precondition that the borrowing country would undertake a structural reform in its economy to avoid a domino effect in the world economy. India faced the BOP crisis in 1991. Approached the IMF and World Bank for loans. India agreed. India agreed to the conditions. Conditionalities of the World Bank and IMF and announced the new economic policy (NEP). The NEP consisted of wide-ranging economic reform known as LPG or the liberalization, privatization and globalization. Regions for import. Reasons for imports. Trade deficit occurs when the value of import by a country exceeds its export. The reason why a country import more goods are if there is no production done domestically. If the production done is not sufficient to meet the domestic demand. Production is sufficient but costly and of inferior quality. Example: the Indian automobile industry imports good quality cheaper steel from China despite having domestic production. The imports can be reduced either by increasing the production or reducing the consumption. Trade deficit case of India. India currently faces a trade deficit as the value of its import is much more than the export done by India. The top five imports of India as a percentage of total imports. As of May 22, 2022, are the crude oil and petroleum is imported 29.93% and gold 9.6% and electronic goods 8.98% and coal 8.80% and machinery is 5.14%. Reducing the oil import. To reduce the trade deficit and to make the balance of trade surplus, the government of India has set a target to boost the domestic oil production by 10% by 2022. This required a proper oil exploration policy of India. New exploration licensing policy NELP 1997. It was formulated in 1997 and it becomes effective in 1999. The main objective was to attract Indian and foreign oil companies to explore oil and gas resources in the country to meet rising demands of oil and gas. Since then, licenses for exploration are being awarded only through a competitive bidding system, and national oil companies (NOCs) are required to compete on an equal footing with Indian and foreign companies to secure petroleum exploration licenses. Production sharing contract model. The new exploration licensing policy of 1997 was based on the production was based on the production sharing contract model. Under this model, the oil producing companies had to share a portion of profit earned with the government. However, these companies would lower the production or show lesser profits, causing revenue loss for the government. हाइड्रोकार्बन एक्सप्लोरेशन लाइसेंसिंग पॉलिसी हेल्प 2016 में ये लॉन्च किया गया यूनिफॉर्म लाइसेंस. दिस पॉलिसी हैज़ अ सिंगल लाइसेंस that will cover exploration and production of all type of hydrocarbons which conventional oil and gas, coal bed, methane, shale oil, gas, hydrates, etc. Revenue sharing model, simple, easy to monitor, only two monitoring parameters for the government, which is the revenue and productions of the contractor. This policy has replaced the earlier model of production sharing contract PSC. Reduced and graded royalty rates to encourage exploration in deep water and ultra deep water. To encourage exploration in deep water and ultra deep water areas, the royalty was exempted for the first 7 years. The royalty was exempted for the first 7 years, and subsequently royalty of 5% and 2% applicable in deep water and ultra deep water areas respectively. Open acreage licensing OAL mechanism. It gives an option to a company looking for exploring hydrocarbons to select the exploration blocks on its own without waiting for the formal bid round from the government. Marketing and pricing freedom for the crude oil and natural gas produced. Strategic reserve. A strategic petroleum reserve is a stockpile of crude oil held by a government or a private company to ensure economic and national security during an energy crisis. A strategic reserve held by a country is in addition to the existing storage of crude oil and petroleum products with oil companies. The concept of having a strategic petroleum reserves originated during the 1973 energy crisis. The presence of petroleum reserves would stop a sudden price hike in the event of a global crisis. The world discouraged the uses of oil. The world crisis and would discourage the use of oil as a political weapon. Indian strategic petroleum reserves. The Multinational International Energy Agency (IEA). The Multinational International Energy Agency was established in 1974 to ensure security of oil supply and solidarity amongst major industrial countries in dealing with energy crisis. IEA contains the International Energy Program. In its framework, commits the member countries to maintain sufficient oil reserve to have an emergency response for at least 90 days. India signed it in 2017. Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves Limited (ISPRL). Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves Limited (ISPRL). A Government of India Special Purpose Vehicle has established strategic petroleum reserves. At 3 locations in phase 1, namely Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh में, Mangaluru, Karnataka, and Padur in Karnataka. As per the consumption pattern of 2019-20, the total capacity of the strategic oil reserves is estimated to provide for about 9.5 days of crude oil requirement. In addition, oil marketing companies OMC is in the country have a storage facility for crude oil and petroleum products for 64.5 days. Thus, the current total national capacity for storage of crude oil and petroleum products currently is 74 days. Under phase 2 of the SPR program, the government has given in principle approval in 2018 for establishing two additional SPR facilities at Chandni Khol in Odisha and Padur in Karnataka. Let me take a little break. What is the time? It's 3:30, 3:40. Let me take a little break and then after 10 minutes I'll start the history part. मौर्यन एम्पायर करके है, उसको स्टार्ट करेंगे, इसको ख़त्म करेंगे. दिल्ली की यादें ताज़ा हो गई. ऐसे ही वहाँ पे भी लाइब्रेरी में बैठे बैठे सो जाओ, पता ही नहीं चलता था. तो स्टार्ट करें, तैयार हो आप सब? हैं? ओके ओके देन शुरू करते हैं। द ग्रेट मूवमेंट, तो हिस्ट्री का एक पार्ट तो वीडियो कल आ गया था, दूसरे पार्ट का वीडियो ये रिवीजन आज करेंगे हम। और बताओ आप लोग तब तक अपने बारे में क्या हाल चाल है, ज़िंदगी कैसे चल रही है, और क्या कर रहे हो, कैसे पढ़ाई कर रहे हो। अपना डेली शेड्यूल छोड़ जाओ इस पे कमेंट में। अपना डेली शेड्यूल छोड़ दो। मैंने ना मैप ला के रखा है मैंने, बट मुझे मौका नहीं मिल रहा है कि मैं इसे लगाऊं इधर। मैप ला के रखा है, इसका मतलब ये पॉलिटिकल मैप इसका, लेकिन मेरे को मौका नहीं मिल रहा है, इसी पे लगाऊंगा यहाँ पे। अच्छा लगेगा। आजकल में लग जाएगा या संडे को लग जाए। हमने क्या पढ़ने हैं? हिस्ट्री में मॉडर्न एम्पायर, इसका एक पार्ट मैंने कल कंप्लीट कर दिया है, तो लाइव वीडियो में होगा, आप चेक कर लो। अभी हम पढ़ेंगे लेक्चर नंबर बहुत लंबा है। हिस्ट्री कैसे होगा बाबा? ओ बाबा इतना लंबा कैसे चलेगा? ओके देन शुरू करते हैं। चलेगा नहीं चलेगा, करना तो पड़ेगा ही। धम्मास पॉलिसी तो हो गया था, क्वेश्चन इससे रिलेटेड हुआ था वो। अशोकास धम्मा पॉलिसी। ये एक और चीज़ मैं बता दूं कि आपको इसमें डेली 2 मेंस का क्वेश्चन मैं आपको प्रोवाइड कर दूंगा, तो आप लोग भी मेरे साथ प्रैक्टिस शुरू कर लो। डेली 2 करोगे, सोच लो 1 साल अगर टाइम देते हो तो 365 का डबल कर लो, 3570 72 720 क्वेश्चन। 720 क्वेश्चन बहुत होता है, बहुत मतलब बहुत आंटी मेजी। अशोका's धम्मा पॉलिसी। Ashoka held the third Buddhist council Sangati around 250 BC at Ashoka Rama in Patliputra. And the second one is Ashoka set a very high deal for himself, and this was the ideal of paternal kingship as agents of the king. The officials were also asked to take care of the people. Ashoka appointed Dhamma Mahamantras to propagate Dharma among various social groups, including women, and appointed rajukas for the administration of justice in his empire. For the administration of his justice in his empire. एक मिनट. जीने नहीं दूंगा. कोई बायोग्राफी मूवी सजेस्ट करते रहो कमेंट में. ओके, मौका मिलेगा मैं देखूंगा. हम क्या कर रहे थे यहाँ पे थे. Justice in his empire. Ashoka disapproved the rituals. Ashoka disapproved of rituals, especially those observed by women. He also forbade killing certain birds and animals, prohibited the slaughter of animal in the royal kitchen, and forbade the slaughter of animal in sacrifices. Ashoka inscriptions are called Dhamma Lipi, which cover not only religion and morality but also embraces social and administrative matters. They can be compared to the dharma shastras or book laws written in Sanskrit under Brahmanical influences. Though the Dharma Lipi were written in Prakrit under Buddhist influence, they try to regulate the social order like the Dharma Shastras. The Ashokan edicts can be also compared to the Sasnas or royal edicts issued in Sanskrit by the Brahmanized king. The broad objective of Ashoka's Dhamma policy was to preserve the social order. To preserve the social order. Preserve the social order. He ordained that people should obey their parents. He ordained that people should obey their parents, pay respect to the Brahmanas and Buddhist monks, and show mercy to slave and servants. Above all, the Dhamma Lipi also asked the people to show firm devotion. Bridha Bhatt, or loyalty to the king, These instructions are found in both the Buddhist and Brahmanical faith. Ashoka taught people to live and let live. He emphasized compassion towards animals and proper behavior towards relatives. His teachings were meant to strengthen the institution of family. His teachings were meant to strengthen the institution of family and the existing social classes. He held that if the people behaved well, they would go to heaven, but never said that they would attain nirvana, which was the goal of Buddhist teaching. Ashoka's teaching were thus intended to maintain the existing social order on the basis of tolerance. He does not seem to have preached any sectarian faith. The historical significance of Ashoka. Ashoka brought about the political unification of the country. He bound it further by one dhamma, one language, and virtually one script called Brahmi, which was used in most of his inscriptions. In unifying the country, he respected non-Indian scripts such as Kharosthi, Aramaic, and Greek. He had tolerance. He had tolerance and respect with regard to the religion and its scripts. His inscriptions appear not only in different types of Indian languages like Prakrit, but also in Greek and particularly in Aramaic, which was a Semitic language of ancient Syria, His multi-script and multilingual inscriptions enabled him to contact literate people. Ashoka followed a tolerant religious policy, not attempting to foist his Buddhist faith on his subject. He gave gifts to non-Buddhist sects, like gifting the Barabar caves to Ajivikas. Ashoka is important in history for his policy of peace, non-aggression, and cultural conquest. He consistently adhered to his policy, for though he possessed sufficient resources and maintained a huge army, he did not wage any war after the conquest of Kalinga. He also had relations with the outer world. Mauryan administration, mostly a decentralized bureaucratic system which derived the power from the king. But there was a presence of paternal despotism instead of divine rule. The Mauryas organized a very elaborate system of administration. This is known from the account of Megasthenes and the Arthashastra of Kautilya. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador sent by Seleucus to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. He lived in the Maurya capital of Patliputra and wrote an account not only of the administration of the city of Patliputra but also of the Maurya Empire as a whole. These fragments have been collected and published in the form of a book entitled Indica, which throw valuable light on the administration society and economy of Mauryan times. Megasthenes' account can be supplemented by the Arthashastra of Kautilya. Arthashastra was finally compiled a few centuries after Maurya's rule. Some of its books contain material that provides authentic information about the Maurya administration and economy. Saptanga theory. Kautilya enumerated seven prakritis. Prakritis are essential organs of the state. They are as follows: Swami, the ruler; Amatya, the minister; Janapada, the population; Durga, the fortified capital; Kosha, the treasury; Danda, the army; Danda, the army; Mitra, ally and friend; Mitra. First, the king, Shamin. It was regarded as the soul of all the seven elements. The king was the Dharma Pravakta and was assisted by a council. He was the promulgator of social order as he issued Raja Sasna, royal royal rescripts, Purana, Pakiti, maintaining ancient rules and customs. king took final call on all aspects, including regarding revenue, law and order, war, or any other matter related to administration He was expected to be flexible. And always accessible by his officials. He helped the vulnerable sections of the society, such as women, children, and old. He considered all his subjects were like his children, and he desired their happiness in this and the other world. He ensured the welfare of the people, especially by planting trees, constructing wells, medical care facilities, etc. His own security was to be checked. There were personal bodyguards of the king who were skilled in ar- archery, system of spies, sanstha or stationary spies who were posted permanently at a particular region. Sanchara are wandering spies who wandered from one place to collecting sacred information. Pativedikas and Pulisani who functioned as special reporters of the king and kept him informed of public opinion. Kept him informed of public opinion and kept him informed of public opinion and kept him informed of public opinion kept him informed of public opinion. Chandragupta Maurya. He was an autocrat who concentrated all power in his hand. All power in his hands. He stated that in the happiness of his subjects lay his happiness, and in their travels lay his troubles. He also maintained the body of spies. Kautilya advised the king to promulgate dharma when the social order based on the varnas and ashramas state in life collapses. He calls the king as dharma pravartaka. Or promulgator of the social order. That the royal orders were superior to other orders was asserted by Ashoka in his inscriptions. Ashoka inscription shows that royal return throughout the country except the extreme east and south. Ashoka promulgated dharma and appointed officials to inculcate and enforce its essential throughout India. An assertion of royal absolutism was a natural culmination of the policy of military conquest adopted by the princes of Malla, Anga, Vaisali, Kasi, Koshala, Avanti, Kalinga, etc. One by one were annexed to the Magdam Empire. Military control over these areas eventually turned into a coercive control over the lives of the people. Magadha had the requisite power of the sword of enforce its overall authority in order to control various spheres of life, the state had to maintain a vast bureaucracy. Amatyas. It was a form of central administration. It was a form of central administration. Amatyas were high official councillors and executive heads of departments, minister and department ministers. The Mantri Parishad. The king was assisted by Mantri Parishad, whose members included the Mantri Parishad. First, the Yuvaraja, the crown princess, the Purohit, chief priest, the Senapati, the commander in chief, a few other ministers. The Mahamantrians or high ministers also attended the Mantri Parishad meeting. Important functionaries were called tirthas. Most functionaries were paid in cash, the highest among whom the minister, mantri, high priest, purohita, commander in chief, senapati, and crown princes, Yuvraj were paid generously. There were bodies of nikayas, trained officials who looked after the ordinary affairs of the realm. Other important officials were Mahamatas, and Adhyakshas. The Adhyakshas or superintendents were high-ranking officials next to the Tirthas concerned mostly with economic functions and some military duties. The Mahamatas were high-ranking officials. The magistrates who looked after towns and cities were called Nagar 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 Adhyaksha, and those looking after the military were called Baladhyaksha. Baladhyaksha. Sam Samni Dhatri Samni Dhatri treasurer who was in charge of the royal stores who was in charge of the royal stores. Aksha Patala. Records cum audit officers. The Dwarika, chief of the place's attendants. The administrative mechanism was backed by an elaborate system. The administrative mechanism was backed by an elaborate system of espionage. Various type of spies collected intelligence about foreign energies and kept an eye on numerous officers. Various tests were conducted for the acceptability of appointments. Various tests were conducted for the acceptability of appointments. Dharma Padha Sudha, to be purified by religion test. Arthopadha to be purified by a money test. Kamopadha to be purified by a love test. Bhayopadha to be purified by a fear test. Important officials. Terms. Nagaraka, the officer in charge. The officer in charge of the city administration. Accountant general. Akshantala. Sita Adhyaksha supervised agriculture. Panyadhaksha superintendent of commerce. Adhyaksha Lisha superintendent of market. Pau- Pautavadhyaksha, superintendent of weights and measures. Navadhyaksha, superintendent of ships. Sulodhyaksha, collector of tolls. Akaradhyaksha, superintendent of mines. Lohadhyaksha, superintendent of iron. Baladhyaksha, military. Sanidhata, chief treasury officer and looked into royal stories. Samaharta, the collector general of revenue, plus most of superintendents were under him, plus maintained accounts of collection of taxes. Vyahari, chief justice of Dharmasya Nyayalaya civil code. Pradishtha, chief justice of Kanta Kashodhan Nyayalaya criminal code. Dhamma Mahamantras, a new post created by Asoka, empowered with Mamma Mahanlana functions of propagating dharma and taking care of the folk and their material well-being. Rashtrapala Kumara, the viceroy in charge above province. Pradeshika, they were the modern district magistrate. Rajukas, they were the latter-day patwaris and responsible for surveying Kajukas, and assassinating the land. Yukta, a subordinate revenue officer of the district level. Sthanika, the collecting officer directly under the control of Pradeksha. Gopa, responsible for accounts. Janapada, it was a form of provincial administration. Provincial administration that include not only territory but also population. Provinces. Janapada, it was a form of provincial administration. It includes not only territory but also population. Provinces. Capital. Uttar northern provinces. Dakshila. Avanti Rashtra, western provinces. Ujjain. Prachi, eastern and central provinces. Kalinga, eastern provinces. Dakshinapatha, southern provinces. Subhanagiri. The empire was divided into a number of provinces, and each of these was placed under a prince who was a scion of the royal dynasty. The provinces were divided into still smaller units, and arrangements were made for both rural and urban administration. A large number of towns relate to Maurya time. Patliputra, Kaushambi, Ujjain, and Takshila were the most important cities. Pataliputra was the chief center of royal power, but Tosali, Subharnagiri, Ujjain, and Takshila were seats of provincial power. Kautilya prescribed the following requisites of a prosperous Janapadas in terms of territories. First, accommodate and support people. Accommodate and support people. Defend the state against enemies. Defend the state against enemies. Find occupation of people. Those have manageable. Those have manageable neighbors. Those can provide pastures. Those have arable land mines, forests. Those can provide good internal communication. Rivers, roads, and outlets to sea. According to the Junagadha rock edicts of Rudradaman, Saurashtra was governed by Pushya, Pushyagupta, the Vaisya at the time of Chandragupta Maurya, and by the Yavan king Ushpa at the time of Asoka. Administrative unit. Chakra provinces. Rashtra Pala Kumara Prince Law and Order plus Revenue, assisted by Mahamadhyas and Council of Ministers. Ahar Vishya District. Pradeshika Rajukas, land revenue assisted by Yuktas. Sangrahana, a group of 10 villages, Gupa. Gram, villages, Gramika. Under other administrative units, Sathnya, 800 villages. Dronamukha, 400 villages. Karvatika, 200 villages. Sangrahama, 10 villages. Each of them was governed by a governor called Kumara or princess, and thus every governor hailed from the royal family. Princely governor of Toshali administered Kalinga and also part of Andhra, and that of Swarnagiri ruled the Deccan area. Similarly, the princely governor of Ujjain ruled the Avanti area, while that of Taxila the frontier area. The princely governor may have functioned as autonomous rulers, and although some governors oppressed their subjects, Asoka's authority was never seriously questioned. Municipal administration. Kautilya devotes a full chapter to the rules of the Nagaraksha, city superintendent. His chief duty was maintenance of law and order. Megasthenes' account of the system, six committees of five members, each of their functions, each and their functions. First, industrial production. Second, entertainment of foreigners. Third, registration of births and date states. Fourth, trade and commerce, market regulation, wealth and measure of to be sold before bought. Sitaram. Sale of manufactured goods. Sixth, collection of taxes. 1/10 of the article price. Megasthenes also refers to the administration of Patliputra, the capital of the Maurya. The city was administered by six committees, each of which consisted of five members. These committees were entrusted with sanitation, care of foreigners, registration of birth and death, regulation of rates and measures, and similar other functions.
Various type of weights belonging to Maurya times have been found in several places in Bihar. According to Kautilya, the central government maintained about 2 dozen departments of state which controlled social and economic activities, at least in the areas that were in proximity to the capital, Durga fortified capital. As per a Greek writer, Justin, the most striking feature of Chandragupta Maurya's admin was the maintenance of a huge army. Chandragupta maintained 6 lakhs, 6 lakh foot soldiers. Chandragupta maintained 6 lakh foot soldiers, 13,000 cavalrymen, and 9,000 elephants. The Mauryas also maintained a navy. The Maurya military strength was almost 3 times that of the Nandas, and this was apparently because of much larger empire and thus for greater resources. According to Megasthenes, the administration of armed forces was carried on by 6 committees consisting of 5 members each. Each of them looked at one of the 6 divisions of armed forces: army, navy, cavalry, elephants, chariots, transport. The Maurya period was two types of Gudha Purusha detectives: Sanatan Sanchari wandering. Megasthenes wrote the Patliputra was bounded by a deep ditch and a wooden wall crowned with 570 towers and had 64 gates. The ditch, timber palisades, and also wooden houses have been found in excavation. Antama Antama Hamataj Antama Mahamtaj Anta Mahamantaj was responsible for the security of frontier forts. Chanakya describes the construction of the fort as well as he strongly approves the recruitment of a standing army from all 4 Varnas. Several other several adhyakshas, superintendents of various armies, wings, and units, served under senapatis and nayaks, 2 prominent military leaders. The war officer had 30 members who were experts in different branches of military, art and science, etc. They were divided into 6 board of 5 members each. Board of Admiralty, in charge of the navy. Board of Infantry, headed by Padadhyaksha. Board of Cavalry, headed by Ashwadhyaksha. Board of War Chariots, headed by Rathadhyaksha. Board of War Elephants, headed by Hastadhyaksha. Board of Transport and supervisions of equipment. There was a periodic levy of troops such as Mola, hereditary warrior, Bhartyakaza, mercenaries, and from forest tribes, soldiers and allies furnished by friends. Kosa Treasury. The state controlled almost all the economic activities in the real. The state brought The state brought new land under cultivation with the aid of cultivators and Sudra laborers. The virgin land that was open to cultivation yielded handsome income to the state in the form of revenue collected from the newly settled peasants. The taxes collected from the peasants varied from one fourth to one sixth of the produce. Those who were provided the irrigation facilities by the state had to pay for it. In addition, in times of emergency, peasants were compelled to raise more crops, raise more. Main crops were rice, barley, wheat, millet, sugarcane, pulses, oilseed, etc. The modern The Mauryan administration established a new agricultural settlement to bring virgin land under cultivation known as Sunyavesha. Sunyan It was owned by the king and looked after by Sitadhyaksha, superintendent of agriculture. Mauryas maintained a huge standing army and employed a large number of state officials. Maurya maintained a huge standing army and employed a large number of state officials. Soldiers and officials were paid. People, I think it's too much. And what is the time? It's okay. इसको यहाँ स्टॉप करते हैं और नेक्स्ट क्लास यहीं से स्टार्ट करेंगे. ओके, फ्रॉम फ्रॉम हेयर. कोसा ट्रेजर तो हो गया. कोसा ट्रेजर कंप्लीट कर लेते हैं, उसके बाद रोक देंगे. ओके. Soldiers and officials were paid in cash. The state taxes were not considered sufficient to meet all the needs of the state. Taxes were levied in both cash and kind. The concept of private property of kshetras emerged during this time, where the kshetra's landowner was distinguished from the upashwa tenant. Peasants paid one-sixth of produce as bhaga and extra tax bali as a tribute. The bali was the main item of revenue and was levied at the rate of one-sixth of the produce. Certain other taxes that peasants had to pay were Pindakara, assessed on group of villages; Hiranya, paid only in cash; Kara, levied on fruits and flower gardens, etc. Land taxes was collected by a class of official called agronomoi. The Maurya period constitutes a landmark in the system of taxation in ancient India. Kautilya names many taxes which were collected from peasants, artisans, and traders. This required a strong and efficient machinery for assessment, collection, and storage. The Samhartha was the highest officer in charge of assessment. and collections, and the Sanidhata was the chief custodian of the state treasury and storehouse. The existence of rural storehouse shows that taxes were also collected in kind. These granaries were probably also meant to help local people in times of famine, drought, etc. पेपर यहाँ रोकते हैं यार, बहुत ज़्यादा फ्रस्ट्रेशन होता है। मैं थोड़ी देर रेस्ट करूँगा, फिर देखते हैं क्या करते हैं, ठीक है। और मैं आपको बता दूं कि डेली आपको 2 मेंस के क्वेश्चन मिल जाएंगे इस पे। आप लोग मेरे साथ प्रैक्टिस करो, मिल जाएंगे, साथ साथ सॉल्यूशन भी होगा, तो आप लोग प्रैक्टिस करो साथ साथ मज़े से। ओके, सो मिलता है नेक्स्ट वीडियो में। और कुछ वीडियो हैं जो अभी शाम तक 8-9 बजे तक पब्लिश हो जाए। ओके, थैंक यू, बाय बाय।